whether it's site appropriate. In other words, my real question is, did you have to build a building that's 60 feet, strike it, that's 60 units and is 100 yards long, like a football field, in order to get enough units to make the project economically feasible? Is that what we're talking about here?
And then,
Okay.
because I think you're responding to what you see on a piece of paper in a flat view, right? The 300-foot long footprint.
Yes, sir.
But what you
Well, I know
actually-
football fields. I used to
Right,
play football
right.
as a kid.
Cathedral High.
But what you're actually
We
gonna
heard
see
all
is-
about it in the past.
You're gonna see what
Let's
looks
talk
like
about
a
his
collection
career.
of buildings together. You're not going to see one long factory building. I think that's what you're describing sounds to me more like a one long building.
The plan that I saw showed that you could walk from the, let's say, the southerly portion of that building through an interior corridor all the way to the northerly portion of the building. So there's one corridor that looked to me to be 80 yards, 85 yards long in the interior of that building. Am I incorrect in making that assumption?
It's a little bit shorter than that.
What do you say, 70 feet, 70 yards?
We can take a look at it.
Well, when we get to that, why don't we address that interior corridor and whether that's appropriate? Yes, ma'am.
You know, we have done a market study for the site, and there are apartment buildings within 5 miles. I don't really think that that's what your question is. I think your question is how...
Apartment buildings that are
as-
100
I
100
think
yards
your
long?
question was answered by Gary, which is that although when you look at the apartments from the outside, the facades are staggered, and that's what he's trying to depict here. So
Well,
I
I
think
understand what the
let's stick to the
architect...
architectural detail, and let's see if we can get Gary to finish his
Maybe I can ask the questions that I prefer to ask and not ask you to direct me how to ask my questions.
That's not my intention. If you're looking for other apartment buildings,
Right,
then
they're
we're
100 yards
obligated to
long.
provide that to you.
No, you're not obligated to do anything. I would assume that as part of good planning, you try to consider whether there are similar buildings that are site appropriate. And if there are, I'd like to see them. I haven't. I'm not the architect. And I really like to know whether the reason for doing that is just the economics of the project. If you're going to put, whatever it is, 25 affordable housing units there, then you need 90 units. And the only way you can feasibly do 90 units is do a 30-unit building and a 60-unit building. Otherwise, you do a cluster development, and you wouldn't have enough apartments in order to make the project economically feasible. If that's the reason for it, that's fine. If you're suggesting that that building is a good architectural and good planning practice, then boy, I'd like to see more evidence of that, and I'd like to see where these buildings are, because I frankly haven't seen them. They're that big.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't you proceed?
All right. So we've looked at the village view. This drawing responds to some of the questions you had, Mr. Chair, about building height, visibility, so on, et cetera. So just to begin, the top half of this drawing shows the more like construction sections through the building, schematics, construction sections. The building on the west has the garage under and 3 residential levels above the garage, and then a roof structure, a sloped roof structure. So on the west side of the west building, we have three stories exposed, and on the east side of the same building, there's 4 floors. So the garage level is slightly just below grade here, but there's essentially a level of garage providing like a podium for the building, and then the 3 residential floors above it. So on the left side, it's 3 stories. This first floor level is 10 feet lower than the land above it. It's very hard to see in this drawing, but this little guy here is the same as the big guy.
Yep.
So this floor, the first floor level, is 10 feet lower than the grade of the property line. So the first floor is kind of submerged in that
I need to go
respect.
back to that other plan. But could you go back to the other plan
Sure.
and show us where those sections are? Just draw that section,
Yeah.
so that we can see where it is in plan?
So roughly,
Understood,
yeah. Section through here,
yeah. That's what you're calling the west building.
That's the west building.
Yeah.
This is the west property line here.
The section, draw that again?
Right.
And that's looking north?
Approximately, right. That's looking north.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similar, the other section is through the center, pretty much the middle of that building,
Yeah,
looking north.
okay, thank you.
Wrong way. Okay. So between the two buildings.
On the west building, on the east side of the west building, where you've got the, you said there was like a podium.
Yes.
It's not gonna look like a garage, right? It's somehow masked?
There'll be landscaping in front of it, and we've chosen some materials that we think will be, it's not a concrete structure.
Okay.
You won't be seeing any concrete. Okay. The other building, the west building, is similar. It's 3 stories on the west side and 4 stories on the east side. There's garage below as well, the 3 levels of residential, and sloped roofs as well. This roof has a shape to it, and the reason for that shape, being flat on top, is so we can put what's normally you see in a lot of multifamily residential projects, all the air conditioners on the ground outside of the apartments. We don't think that's a good use of the landscape. We'd rather landscape around the apartments, so we've put all those condenser units up, hidden in the roof structure itself.
Is that just for that building or for the both?
The other building has a similar setup. It's slightly different, and I have another slide that will show exactly where those that equipment is.
But they're
located.
not exposed to public view as well?
No, they're
Is that
screened up on the roof
Thank you.
with roof screens.
Great.
Okay, so we've got our 2 buildings together. There's a plateau between the 2 buildings, roughly level where the parking is, and the grade drops off sharply off the back of the east building. This is the property line for the residences. It's about 227 feet from our building to the residential, the property line behind the residences on Randolph Avenue. We're about 50 feet and more from the corner of the east building to the west property line. Okay.
And now it says no disturbance zone. Is that the wetlands area? Is
Yes.
that what's going on there?
Yes.
And those trees stay?
Everything that's
Anything within 25 feet of the wetlands is, nothing's touched. I think that's actually like a law.
So the east wall on the east side, on the east building, that's gonna be pretty high. What's the dimension?
that foundation wall does get about to be 10 feet high
Just 10?
in
It
this.
looks bigger than that.
Yeah,
that
in the
section.
back there.
Yeah.
The elevation here is between, I believe it's about elevation 120,
Yeah.
and the garage floor is about elevation 130.
And what's the elevation of the first floor?
The elevation of the first floor, I'll have to look, but I believe it's about elevation 140,
138.
138. Do you see that?
We're trying to get an idea how big that wall is.
Yes.
And is that going to be artificially screened, or I see the tree in the bottom section. Is that suggesting a landscape treatment, or will it be screened with the natural vegetation from the wetland and the tree area?
Sure, it's going to be a combination of the two. I'm trying to get back to our friend, this plan here. So all this area here, the dash line, here's the east wall, the east building
Right.
that we're talking about. So this line, this heavy dashed line, is the line of no disturbance in the wetlands area. So basically, we're very limited in what we can do there, if anything. So this piece of property here, Jim, you may want to correct me on, part of this is being used for replication of the wetlands.
Yeah, I think it's more detailed in the grading plan. You can kind of see the contours.
But currently, this is all wooded. This is all wooded here.
That's the wetland.
That's the wetlands.
I have a question for you. Does the buffer zone, is What is that, a foot away from the building or something like that? It's very close.
Yeah, we're outside of the buffer zone
Okay.
with the
Does
building.
that mean that people who are inhabiting the building cannot walk around the easterly portion of the building? In other words, does the buffer zone preclude that? Or can they walk in the buffer zone?
Yes.
Use it for access or whatever reason? They certainly can't play in it or disturb it, but
It's not really practical. I don't know what the
Is it
laws are. Is that what you're saying? Is there like a law that you can't walk?
yeah,
through
is that
wetlands?
wet? If I walked out a foot off the building, is that all wetlands? I mean, that's really wet as opposed to.
The wetland side.
Macotech. Sorry. The buffer zones are just demarcate jurisdictional resource areas around those wetlands. So the wetland itself is wet, but those buffer zones are typical upland. In this instance, the buffer zones are forested.
Okay, so
Just
can you
typical
walk in
forest.
the buffer
You can-
zone
you can
without
walk
violating wetlands laws?
Yes.
Or kids could play in the buffer zone?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, that's great.
All right, I think I've finished my discussion on this slide here. If we can move on to the next one.
But before you get off, on the east building, those roof treatments, that's completely hidden.
On the east building, the roof treatments, you mean the mechanical equipment
Yeah.
up on the roof? Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
They'll be concealed on both buildings.
Yeah, thank you.
So getting more into the detail of the buildings, this is the footprint or the basement garage level.
I'm sorry, can I ask you a question that pops into my mind? I realize that on the westerly building, the air conditioning vents and equipment, whatever else you have up there is screened. But is noise from those air conditioning units or ventilating systems, it's going to be noticeable on adjacent properties that are on the western side? In other words, did you do a study, or does a study exist, or are there formulas that you can use to determine that basically the noise from the ventilating system is going to stay within the site and not adversely affect one of the neighbors on the west who may be out sitting by his pool, for example?
I don't actually know the answer to that.
We can get decibel levels from the machines themselves, and
Yes.
we're-
Would you expect, knowing where that westerly building is and knowing where the building, the residences on the west are, that they would not have any serious noise intrusion onto their property? Or is that a study you want to undertake?
that's something I think we need more data to give you a proper answer for.
Okay.
I don't want to.
I don't want you to guess either.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't know whether that was considered as part of this. Maybe that's something that's part of the more, it's not conceptual, it's part of the actual development of the buildings. But I'd like to know the answer to that.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Will do. Okay, sticking with the garage plan, just so we have an understanding of what goes on in the garage, not much, except for the parking. There are 54 cars in the east building, all on the ground, all enclosed, not visible. All the walls enclose the garage completely. There's an entrance door on the left here. People come in the park. There's a elevator. These buildings are all accessible, so if you park in the garage, you can take the elevator up to your floor.
Is that the only elevator in this building?
That's correct, yes.
And is there an architectural reason for that? Because it seemed to me, when I was looking at this plan, it seemed to me if I had one of the apartments on the very left-hand side of the building, and I was carrying my Christmas presents or my groceries or something, I'd have quite a long hall there.
Right, yes.
So I
There
would
are-
assume that most people would put the elevator in a central location, but there must be a good reason why you didn't do it.
Yes. A lot of it has to do with topography. The topography drops off down the other end of the building. It'd be very difficult to get a wheelchair into the building in that situation. So this was it doesn't serve everybody equally well, but it seems to serve most of the population of the building adequately. And then other people may choose to go up the stairs.
So is that one elevator, or are there two elevators?
It's one elevator per building. for 60 apartments, yes.
Is there some type of regulation as to how many units that one elevator can conveniently handle?
Yeah, there's something called level of service, wait time. You've all experienced it. If you've gone up a building, you wait for the elevator, and what's tolerable and what's not tolerable.
So what's the level of service for this elevator estimated to be?
Well, I don't have that information tonight, but I can get that to you.
But did the applicant seriously consider a second elevator, or was it just an issue of losing apartments? Or I think elevators are expensive, and maybe that's an expense you didn't want to endure.
No, we think this is appropriate for this size building, the number of units, the number of floors.
Okay, but you're going to do a quick study or a quick and dirty study and tell us that that's adequate? Or you're not?
It's, it's, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just
I
seemed
can
to
only
me
say
if you
that
have
this
one
is-
elevator with 30, you should perhaps have 2 elevators for 60. But that may be intuitive, and it may not be
Yeah.
engineering science at all.
Now, we've done all different kinds of projects, and some may have 70 apartments with 1 elevator, and sometimes we'll have 2 elevators. It depends on the project, depends on the terrain, it depends on a number of factors.
Whether you have an older clientele or a younger clientele, the younger kids maybe can walk up, be a little more active than the older folk.
Right. But we do have the stairs for those active types on these 2 areas here. So if you live on the first floor, you could walk up the stairs in lieu of the elevators. The other thing we have going in the garages is the trash management. So all the trash management is within the buildings. There's no trash dumpsters outside of the buildings.
That's
So-
intentional.
That's very intentional. The way it works is trash will be collected in carts. The carts will be wheeled out to the garage entrance, and trash pickup will occur at the entrances to each garage door. That's about it in the garages. There's space for bicycle parking that will be provided.
I'm sorry, on that trash.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Trash, okay.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, where is the trash collected in the building? Is there a
There's a trash chute that terminates in this room right there.
So,
So if you're on the upper floor and you have trash, you bring it to the trash room. There's a chute, you open the door, you put your trash bag in, and it falls down to the lowest level. And
is there one chute in this building, or are there
there's only
multiple
one chute,
chutes?
yes.
I'm sorry, one chute. One
Chute
chute.
per building.
Can I ask you why you wouldn't have more chutes? I mean, this isn't a big issue, but it seems
Yes.
if I had an apartment on the left-hand side of the building, that's a long walk. That may be a 50-yard walk to the chute, maybe longer.
Yes, if you go into the elevator, it would seem to be convenient to bring the trash to have the trash chute located next to the elevator.
So everything goes down the chute, and where is it collected on the ground floor?
Yes, it's collected in this room
Yep.
in carts, wheeled carts that are rolled out to out to the garage
And the
door.
size of that room is approximately? I know that's not to scale, but just a ballpark.
Let's say it's 10 by 20 approximately.
And does that sound adequate to take care of all of the trash for 60?
Yeah, I mean, you'd get a contract set up, and depending on like the volume, they might come twice a week.
Okay, so-
Whatever they come in and grab the barrels. Yeah, and it'd be something that you'd probably have to. The on-site maintenance person might have to monitor that, but I think that's kind of something you got to
Okay,
figure
so
out.
the
what
trash
you're gonna-
contractor would park the trash truck outside the building somewhere. Where would they park? You know?
Probably, I'm guessing maybe near the garage
On the
door.
left-hand side? Is that right? On the left-hand side of the building?
That's where the garage
Yes, sir.
door is, yeah, there's
So
one
the-
garage door here.
They'd park there?
Yes.
They wouldn't bring the truck inside?
No, no.
No, no. And so you'd have to haul the trash for 60 units all the way to the end of the building?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's normally,
That's pretty standard.
it's
yeah.
pretty standard, okay.
Yeah.
And they would,
They're tough
in
guys. They can-
dumpsters or little dumpsters? or
Like
what?
wheel dollies, wheel big carts.
Sure,
So that's the trash. What about the recycling?
same thing.
The same chute?
No, we can't put it down the same chute, we can't mix.
You only have
recyclables
one
and
chute.
trash. Right, so recycling would either be handled with recycling separately, with recycling at each floor level, and recycling bins. or it would be, essentially, that's the approach we're taking here for this project.
I think you could have more recycling than trash.
I think you're right, yeah.
I don't know about that. I mean, that just seems, I don't know. But on the, so that was one question, maybe we'll come back to that. And on the truck, you're talking about a contracted pickup service for both the recycling and the trash. It would get a sense, it would actually help to have an idea of how many, the frequency of that from a perspective of traffic off of Randolph Avenue. I mean, if that's once a day, but maybe you don't think it is, maybe it's less, even less than that. But we should expect garbage trucks to be taking a left if they're going north on Randolph Ave into the site and a right if they're coming south a couple of times a week.
A couple of times a week.
Garbage, and these would be trucks that would be, what size would they be?
I think they have all kinds of like size vehicles that they send an appropriate one for this particular site. You know, they're not all like the ones you see going through neighborhoods.
Okay. But regardless, it's not going to be a town-sponsored activity.
No.
You're not going to have town pickup. Okay. Thank you.
Could I ask you one question about the parking spaces? Are the parking spaces that are shown on this plan, are they all uniform size or are they of different sizes?
They're, each parking space is 9 feet by 18 feet. For the most part, there might be a couple that are larger than that because of the space. And then we've got accessible parking spaces that are 8 feet by 18 feet with an 8-foot aisle between the two of them.
And are those typical parking dimensions
Yes,
for a building of a residential building of this size?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. Yes, please. Do you remember where you are?
Yeah,
No,
well,
if you don't, we'll forgive you. Don't worry about it.
go back and have it.
Yes, sir. You want to? No, Mr. Mullen is kidding us. Why don't you proceed?
So this is the first floor plan of the same building above the garage level. This is the front door. We've got a kind of like a farmer's porch entrance here, covered entryway, coming up to the front vestibule. Adjacent to the vestibule is a mail area where residents can pick up their mail and delivery takes place in this space here. The main elevator, main lobby is out front here. And there's a leasing office, management office, right up front where everybody can see it coming in the front door. The amenity spaces that we spoke about earlier are in this area of the building, facing what we like to call the common area between the two buildings. So it's a combination of fitness. There's a fitness area in the back, and there's a club space, which is like a lounge area, living room, large living room type of space residents can relax in. There are some bathrooms associated with that. The balance of the floor is all residential apartments, essentially 2-bedroom and 3-bedrooms on the ends in the corners, and mostly 1-bedrooms along the length of the building. The 1-bedrooms, as Lynn mentioned, are approximately 760 square feet. The 2-bedrooms about 1,100 square feet, and the 3-bedrooms approximately 1,380 square feet. What is slightly gray in this plan here are the locations of the affordable units. So this entire floor has, let's see, 36, about 18 apartments. So there are 6 affordable apartments on this floor. Now, with the affordable units, from the outside of the building or the walking down the corridors, you can't tell which apartment is affordable, which isn't. They look exactly the same from their front door and on the exterior of the building. Interior, there could be some changes, but on the outside, they're going to look like any other apartment in the building. Okay.
Yes, I have a question.
I'm sorry, but you can't designate the affordable units. They have to float. You always have to have 25% affordable units in a comprehensive permit project. If this was a different kind of project, you could designate affordable units, but these cannot. I've already checked with DHCD, and so you can't segregate these specific units as affordable units. They all have to be available as people become income eligible in one of these units, you just don't throw them out. You then have to have the next available unit has to be provided to an affordable renter. So these color designations cannot be happening.
Okay. We had to show affordable units, some, you know, at least designate that we've got 6 per floor, and they're proportionate to the number of 1s and 2s and 3-bedroom units.
We did that for purposes of mass housing. We were asked to do it. If we need to do something differently, then we will certainly take a look at that, and we appreciate your input.
Yeah, I mean, you know full well that we're gonna have to have a restriction that's gonna say that these units are gonna float. So if that's gonna change the numbers because you are not gonna do the same interiors for these units, that won't work. You're gonna have to have the same interior for all of the units, because any one of them could become an affordable unit if somebody is not income eligible. So if you were planning on saving money by making sure they look fine from the outside, but they had different finishes in the inside, that's not gonna work.
We absolutely appreciate your comment. We were more interested in showing that we were scattering the affordable units throughout the building, because it was our understanding that with regard that you can't put all of the affordable units in one building, they need to be scattered throughout the building. So this was an illustration, and we will certainly have heard your point loud and clear, and we'll get back to you on how that's going to be
Well,
handled.
why don't you get back to the board, please? Attorney
Exactly.
O'Donnell is asking a question, which is a legitimate question, and
Right.
thank you for your questions. You've usurped my questions, but
I
when,
apologize.
but that would give, obviously, get the information back to the board. I mean, thank you for your questions. Why don't you continue? But that was the question that actually popped into my mind.
Fair enough.
I didn't know whether there was going to be a distinct difference, if any, between the affordables.
I don't anticipate any difference.
Okay.
Why don't you proceed?
Great, okay. So relative to this floor, I think we talked about the amenity spaces, the apartments, the locations of the apartments. The only thing left to say about the building is it's fully accessible in terms of handicap accessibility. We've got the parking spaces at the front entrances. It's an elevator building. The whole building is set up for accessibility. So 5% of the apartments will be fully accessible. The Group 2A, according to Massachusetts Architectural Access Board regulations, and the balance of the
What do you
units.
mean by fully accessible?
When we say fully accessible, it means that they can be adapted for a person in a wheelchair to maneuver around throughout. So the bathrooms are larger. All the doors in all the apartments are 3 feet, or at least 3 feet wide to gain access into, but the kitchens are modified slightly to meet the needs of the people who have those needs. So that might be adjustable countertops. In the case of the kitchens, there's a wall oven instead of a oven underneath the stove kind of thing. The grab bars are not installed in the bathrooms until requested, but the blocking for the grab bars are provided in all the apartments. So those kinds of things.
Do the handicapped accessible regulations somehow limit the distance from a handicapped apartment to an elevator, so that it can't be 75 yards to the elevator if you're in a wheelchair, or it has to be like 40 or 50 or 30 yards, and you kind of take the handicapped accessible units and get them closer to to elevator? Because they
Good
can't
point.
use the
I'll
stairs.
look into that. Not that I know of.
I don't know either. That's
It
why I'm
makes-
just
it makes
asking.
sense,
It makes sense to me not to have a handicapped person at the far left side of this building. It would seem to be burdensome, but who knows?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So why don't you continue with your?
Yeah. All right. So the upper floors are basically.
I'm sorry, before we get off one, I'm having trouble following, maybe because mine is a little blurry, but all of these units have to be entered through the central door?
Through the front.
The front door, there's no outside access for any of these first unit?
There are not. All the apartments are accessed by this corridor. And you mentioned before, is it 85 yards long? No, I don't believe it is, but it's broken up into segments. but your front door is off that, what we call a central corridor. And it's
Is there 2 doors?
there is another door that you can access the building in. Right
It's a
here.
key or something.
It could be key or
Yeah.
fob
And you
access.
go in and out that way.
Good.
That's the way to go in and out.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah. And do the units have any outdoor space associated with them?
Just the decks and balconies.
And what are those like?
They're, okay.
Actually, you
I
probably
wish-
showed us photos. I wasn't paying attention.
Well, on the exterior of the building, they're like
Do
that.
each of them have one of those?
Yeah, almost all the apartments, there are several that do not. The inside corner of the building, it's not feasible to put decks there, but I'd say 95% of the apartments have decks.
And do all the 3 bedrooms have decks? Those happen to be in the corners. Some.
Yeah, the inside corner I'm talking about, we'll go back to this guy, is really this location.
That one doesn't have a deck. Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question here? In terms of access to and from the building, you have 2 access points, one the main door and the other one on the far left.
Actually 3, right?
3. Where's the third?
Well,
they're
On the
on
north
right-hand
side.
that right-hand side is
Okay.
really, that's an emergency egress stair,
That's emergency.
so it's egress only, yes.
Now, let me just pose a horrible thought, and that is the building is on fire.
Yes.
And let's assume I don't know whether that's north or east or west, but that the area where the primary exits are on fire. The only access you'd have is that one little one? There's nothing to the rear? There's no emergency
So we've got-
to the rear?
Yeah, we've got, first of all, it's a fully sprinklered building.
Yeah.
Secondly, we've got 2 emergency stairs, one here, one in that location. So if you have an issue with a fire here, you can go out that way, or you can go out that way.
Which way? I'm sorry, you moved
There's
your...
a stair,
Yeah.
a door to the stair
Where do you
here.
go?
That brings you down, this brings you outside.
Yep.
And the other one brings you down, not
Oh.
through the garage, but down to the garage level and then
And
out.
then you'd exit the main entrance to the garage?
Yes.
But you don't provide any other type of exit to the, what I'll call the lower part of this building?
no.
Even though it may be near the wetlands or anything
Right,
like that?
right. No, we do not.
It just, I'm not an architect, but it kind of troubles me if there was a fire on that side of the building. You're not going to use the elevators that they shut down in fires.
You don't want
How
to use
you'd
elevators
get-
during a fire.
How you'd get handicapped people out of this building.
Right. We're a sprinkler building.
You'd have to carry them out, I would think. I know you're a sprinkler
Yeah.
building,
Right.
but... And this may conform with every fire code known to man. I just don't know. It just seems to me that if there was an emergency event, whatever it may be, on that upper side of the building, that ingress and egress to this building is severely limited, and for handicapped people, it may be they have to wait out the storm.
No different than any handicap apartment in a 10-story high-rise building. I mean, you basically have those opportunities to get out the same way, except in a 10-story building, you would have the elevator accessible.
Right.
But any building less than a high-rise building, you've got emergency exit stairs to exit the building.
Okay. Thank you. Why don't you proceed?
Yeah, I just want to add, unfortunately, because Jim Burke is not here, I do believe he has had meetings with the fire department, and maybe we can come back to that issue at our next meeting when he's here.
Okay, and I understand that the representatives of the fire department are supposed to speak to us at some point in time, so that may be helpful as well. And we don't want to impose engineering onto architectural skills, so forgive us if we're asking questions that are beyond your specific expertise.
That's not a problem at all.
Why don't you proceed with your presentation?
So the floor above the 2 floors above, there are 3 residential levels. So the first floor we looked at, the second 2 levels, 2 and 3, are essentially the same. And these only have apartments on them. There's no amenity spaces. So we've got the central corridor, we have a central lobby, and access to all the apartments. So there are 18 apartments per floor, and with a mix of 1s, 2s, and 3s on each floor level.
I've got a question. It's probably a stupid question, but in terms of the affordable units here, I think you told us that your plan was going to be for
23.
23 affordable units, 23 out of the 90.
Correct.
And how do they get mixed in terms of, do you have most of your affordable, are they 1 and 2 bedrooms, or do you do a percentage for each style of unit?
We did 25% of each style unit.
Okay, okay. So
And
it's equitably
and-
spread among the mix.
Right, and the statute provides that we need to provide at least 10% of the units as 3 bedrooms
Thank you.
of the overall project.
So you've got the type of equitable allocation that the affordable housing statute requires in this apartment mix, to the best of your knowledge and belief.
So.
Otherwise, Mr. Caggiano would tell you to change your mix. Okay, why don't you proceed, sir?
Okay. I just want to clear up, I think I just said there's 18 units per floor. It's only 18 units on the first floor. There's 21 apartments on the upper 2 floors each. There's a total of 18 affordable units in this building, and the balance of the affordable apartments will be in the west building, as we call it. So what are the apartments like? Well, we mentioned the unit size.
Sorry, 18 units out of the 23 are in this large building?
Correct.
Why is that so?
Once again, it's 25% of 90
Yep.
and 25% of 30. It's
Okay.
not perfect math, but that's...
But it's close?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not you're not disproportionately putting low-income folks into the bigger building and higher-income folks into the smaller, more elite building, or fancier building, or more private building?
No.
Okay.
No, it's-
The ratios work?
It's just a math, a math thing. Right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So each of the apartments, as I think earlier was mentioned, they're self-contained, with fully appliance kitchens, washer dryers. They have balconies for the most part, with access out to the apartments with doors. There's large windows. The light is very important for us. And we've got 9-foot-high ceilings, so there's a sense of space within these apartments. Moving on to the next slide. Just talking about the exterior materials and the elevations of the building. So this is once again the east building, or the east building, the west view of it. Okay, so this is the front door, basically, we talked about where everybody goes into this building, and the secondary door here. But the idea in this building is to create, this village effect by using the architecture to put the building together with pieces, so that what looks like a house with a roof is distinguished by another piece, another piece, and another piece. So they're individual shapes and forms. And it is hard to see in this drawing because it's a two-dimensional drawing, but this piece on the left comes out towards us. This piece on the right comes out a bit towards us, and the 2 pieces in the center are in the middle. So we have some variation in the surface of the building to help us out with making these shapes that feel more village-like. And then the roof forms also define these as well. Between this typical shape here has 2 apartments, and the balconies are in between these projecting bays and pavilions. They are traditional double-hung windows in most of the apartments. In the bays, a similar thing. We wanted to layer this building, and we looked a little bit, for inspiration, what we wanted to do was layer the building like a cake, layer cake in terms of materials. So the bottom of the building, where these elements project out, and it's much harder to see in this than that picture that was up there, but the village view, is that we've got stone on the bottom, a veneer stone, a field stone, which is a good durable surface for the bottom. And then on the upper levels, we have a residential clapboard type siding, and then a more paneled look on the bays, and then conventional roof shingles, asphalt roof shingles on the sloped roof surfaces. So this is the building that's got the mechanical equipment up on the roof. So you can see how these roofs effectively screen it. And in between these roofs, we have like a balustrade that also will help us to screen the rooftop equipment. So on this side of the east building, this is the west side of the east building, it's 3 stories. And you can see on this other view, which is an end view, which is this end of the building, it's the west side is here, this is the east side. So it's 3 stories on the west side and 4 stories on the east side. And the grade slopes about 20 feet from this side of the building down to the back of the building here. Okay?
So is a stone band, is that uniform throughout the entire elevation?
No, wherever the building projects out, so let's say anything that has a pediment on it, that triangular roof shape, that's got stone at the bottom.
It's a veneer?
It's a veneer stone.
And otherwise at the bottom, what is it?
That's a siding material, it's a different color.
Similar to the clapboarding?
Yes.
Is it actually like is it the same as the clapboarding?
Clapboarding, but a different color.
And can you talk a little bit about the color?
Well,
We saw the village, don't go back. We saw the village view, but that was like a brown, is that what?
well, the color will be developed as we go along, and I think, initially our intent was the bottom color would be similar to the stone color, so brownish.
Regardless of material?
Yes. And then the upper color would be, complementary to that, in the same, let's say, color hue, but a different tone, so it'd be lighter, a lighter color. And then these bays that, with the smaller roofs on it would be, let's call it white.
And would the stone be white too?
No, the stone would be stone colored, a field stone color, kind of a brownish gray.
At some point in this hearing, would you be presenting a rendering that would show what you think the color would be? Or is that what you're not thinking that?
Well, if I showed you this again, would you?
Oh, is that it?
That's essentially the color concept we have for right
Okay.
now. Okay. The west building is smaller, it's 30 apartments. There are 10 apartments per floor, so it's equally the same amount on each of the 3 levels. Once again, it's a combination of 1s, 2s, and 3-bedroom apartments. I mentioned that there's 5 affordable units in this building. The layouts are very similar, it's just a smaller building. This building also has a parking garage completely enclosed in the basement level. There's 29 cars in this parking. It also has similar provisions for the trash management. And on this side of the building, the entrance is right here. So you walk into the building actually at the garage level. But when you walk into the lobby, you don't feel like you're walking into a garage. You feel like you're walking into a nicely furnished lobby with nice finishes. And take the elevator up, as in the other building, to the upper floors. So this building is also accessible for handicap use.
What about the bikes?
The bikes, we've got areas that haven't actually been defined for bike storage, but these striped areas that aren't used, we can't park there, we can't drive there. There's some others here that we anticipate providing some bike storage racks in those locations. This is for all the 4 elevations of the west building. So let's go through them individually. The west side of the west building, so that's facing the west property line, the back property line, is 3 stories high. The other side, facing the east, is 4 stories high. And this is the garage level here. And you had a question about the material. This is all going to be that same veneer fieldstone material on the bottom level. Then there'll be planting in front of it. Some of these bays come down to the ground. The main entrance is in this location. And on the roof, there are areas behind which we've located the mechanical equipment. So these screened areas are where that equipment would be. This shows the garage entrance. So you're entering the building. It's a 18-foot wide garage door, and cars enter and exit through that entrance. The residences will have some sort of device to open and close the doors, whether it's a card reader or a fob or clicker. That hasn't been decided yet.
So there's one entrance to each garage, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and there's no requirement that there be a secondary exit for automobiles?
Not for automobiles, no.
Isn't that the south elevation?
As this says west, it should say, you're exactly right, that should say south.
I was looking for that garage door around the back. I thought maybe you snuck a
No, I
fast one by
apologize.
us.
This says west, this says south, this is east, this says north, it should say west. So we need to correct this drawing. I apologize for that.
I'm glad that it's the labeling and you didn't move the garage.
We didn't twist the building around. All right. So finally, just want to end on this note. We just want to talk about the sustainability of the project and the energy resources. Wilton, of course, is a stretch community. It's voted to adopt the Massachusetts Stretch Code via the Green Communities Act. And so there's a higher level of energy efficiency required for anything built in the town. So what are some of the energy measures we're looking at for this building? Some of them will be apparent from the outside, and some will not be apparent to anybody. But you know, we will use a higher quality level of window because we need to have a very high U value for those windows. All of heating appliances, water heaters, heating equipment will be high efficiency, higher than is required by the base building code. We'll have enhanced insulation in the walls and the roof and the ceilings. And the appliances will all be Energy Star appliances. So there'll be a significant savings in the electrical usage for the residents of this building. There'll be lighting controls in some of the corridors that will limit the duration of the lights being on during the day. And a lot of the, some of the other sustainable features are actually within the site. And I think this might be a good time to kind of segue you into the site discussion. If you have no further questions, I'm finished with the architectural presentation.
I just have one question, and it's just, I think it's a small question, but in one of the letters, I saw people were saying that this particular site doesn't have provision for snow plowing and storage of snow or piling of snow. And how is that taken? Is that something that? Oh.
Mr. Jim.
I might be able to address that, and that's something that we can definitely
Okay,
address.
we'll wait till you get to that. That's fine. Jenny, do you have any questions?
No.
Jeffrey? Okay, who's up next?
That's me. Okay.
Don't look so happy.
I got one ready. So my name's James DeSalle Jr. I'm a civil engineer at DeSalle Burke and Associates.
Good, welcome to the board, Mr. DeSalle.
Glad to join you. And so I've been working as a civil engineer there for about a year now, and the two, what do you call them, partners, Jim Burke and Jim DeSalle, they have more experience than I've been alive for, to put it
That's
easily.
fine. Are you a registered professional engineer?
I'm in engineering training,
Great, okay.
so, but yeah. Okay, so I chose the fire access plan. It's also sort of the site plan too. So as we've already touched upon, there's the two buildings, the 30-unit building and the 60-unit building, and the parking lot. I kind of divided them. When I talk about them, I'll say that's the upper lot, that's kind of the middle lot, and that's the lower lot when I refer to them. The project is accessed by this access road. It's 24 feet wide with a 4-foot wide driveway. And all parking aisles are a minimum of 20 feet wide. So as you can see by this is a little fire truck design. And there's no problem with fire truck access when it comes to getting anywhere in this parking lot area or up the driveway.
But what if there was a fire and there happened to be 3 or 4 trucks? They could gain
They can follow
convenient
each other.
They'd follow each other, but they couldn't turn around.
On the turnaround, it would depend. They'd either have to back up and turn around here, or if depending on who's parked where, they might be able to turn around here. But that would just depend on if.
How would they
going
access
on.
the rear of the buildings? That seems to me to be an obvious question. Would they have access to the rear of the buildings?
From my understanding, they'd be able to either right here access there, or they could always just drive up onto here if need be to access the rear. But that's something that hasn't. I know Jim Burke had talked with the fire department, so he's probably better qualified to address that situation.
Yeah, I don't mean to pin you down. I know you're pinch hitting here, and it's an awkward thing.
Yeah,
But
from my understanding, that was their chief concern was whether they could maneuver a fire truck through the parking lot to get to any point, which they can. They should be able to.
and do you think that the soils on the I'll call it the back side of both buildings would be adequate to support fire apparatus?
I don't know what the
You don't
soils
know
are
those.
like. I don't think we've done tests yet.
Okay.
So
Well, I think the
that's-
fire marshal is going to.
Yeah, that would be something that would definitely be addressed later.
Sure. Why don't you proceed?
All right. And then so also as you can see, there's the walkway to the recreational area. I believe we're proposing that it's gravelled, and it'll just follow the contours of the current site. And I believe it's 6 feet wide. And the reason why it comes down here and over is, as was mentioned, just to avoid the wetlands in here. So.
Can I ask you a silly question?
Yep.
On this access plan, which I think is a conceptual plan, it's not a construction plan.
No.
It shows this gray serpentine-like area.
Is it this?
No, well, I'll call it the area where the traffic, where the fire engines would go. Yeah, right there, where they're turning.
Yeah.
And then going up between the two buildings.
Yep.
That's just a conceptual track that you put on this plan.
Oh,
But
wait, you're
it's-
saying, oh, yeah, that's just the track of what the fire truck would do to get up there. And it's just to show that it can make that turn and it's not going off the driveway or the parking lot area. It's a program it's called AutoTurn. It's a program in AutoCAD that
Okay.
generates that.
Okay, and is that generally utilized for the purposes of determining the
Yeah, it's
proper
just shown
accessibility
to
the
outline
site?
the path the fire truck would take to
Yep.
get to that point right there. That's the fire truck right there,
Yep.
and that's just the pathway that it would take to get there.
And that doesn't make any difference what type of truck it is? It's just a standard fire truck?
It's
or-
a standard fire truck.
Like a ladder? Would a ladder be able to do
It's a typical
this?
ASHTO fire truck. I can double check on that for you.
Okay.
But yeah, there's different vehicles, and that's just the standard fire truck. You can use.
So in terms of something happening, I shouldn't be doing this to you because it's putting you on an unfair spot. But if there was a fire in the middle, let's say the middle of the night, so that most of the parking spaces are filled, and presumably people aren't going to run out of their apartments and jump into their car and try to get off the site, the fire truck would have or several fire trucks would have a rather narrow path to get
Yes,
into these.
but the path doesn't cross over any of the spaces.
noticed that.
So if every single space was full,
Yep.
the fire truck could still maneuver its way
Yep.
up there.
And
That wouldn't be an issue.
But there's no cul-de-sac or anything at the end of this. Why is that? Because you don't want to lose parking spaces? Or?
Well, a big issue is right here is the wetlands right here.
Yep.
So that would just become an issue with the buffer and whatnot. That's something I'm sure we could consider, but that's
Well, this plan, this computerized plan that you utilize, does it provide or consider the turning of the fire trucks around? Or does if there were 3 or 4 fire trucks here, do they have to back out of the site in order to, or back to the corner of this
well,
building?
right now. Yeah, they'd have to back up to this point right here, and then go back out.
And same for,
I know that was something that Jim Burke had been talking to with the fire department.
and that's the same for ambulances and police cars and the like.
They would obviously have different paths. Fire trucks obviously a lot harder to maneuver than a smaller size ambulance or a police car.
Sure, but if you had I won't say catastrophic event, but you had an unfortunate event, there's a fire or an emergency there, you're going to have 3 or 4 fire trucks there, and you're probably going to have 2 or 3 police cruisers there, and you probably have 2 or 3 ambulances there. They're really going to get stacked in there pretty good, aren't they? Because they're coming spontaneously, it's not a
Like I
planned
said, that'd be
operation.
something I think Jim Burke would
Okay,
be
well, we'll ask him.
off answer.
When is he coming back?
He'll be back for the meeting next week, so I mean he should.
He's coming back this weekend.
Oh, is he on a fancy Caribbean vacation or something?
Exactly.
He is. We got you. Where is he?
Aruba.
Oh, how nice. Well, we feel
They didn't invite me.
it was snowing a little bit when I came into this building, so give your dad our best. It sounds great. Why don't you continue with the presentation?
All right. Yes. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, that's the purpose of my questions.
Yeah, right.
Don't worry, you're doing
Oh,
fine.
yeah, I wanted to touch up. I remember you had mentioned the sidewalks.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, there's the sidewalk. It's a 4-foot wide sidewalk coming up the access road.
Right. Some people said that's on the wrong side of the road because nobody's going to go out of this on foot and take a right and walk into the Blue Hills. That more often people will come down that sidewalk and take a left and go to church or go to the.
That's something that it wouldn't be a big deal to change in the concept. We're only in the planning phase. That's something that we could change.
Other
I think
people
that'd
have
be
said that 4-foot sidewalk is inadequate in width. Is
From
there
my
some standard?
understanding,
Is there a
it
standard
is.
as to the width?
From my understanding, it fits the standards. I don't have them in front of me, so I can't 100% confirm it.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Well,
from my understanding, it is sufficient.
and as you're walking across the heading to the entrance,
There's,
aren't
so-
there walls there? Did I see some drawing that had big walls on
I
either
was going
side?
to touch on the grading.
Then why
plan.
don't you go on?
There are walls on
Okay.
both sides,
Let's
but they're
go.
on they're still sufficient. They're on the outside of one side of the street, on the other side, on the other side of the sidewalk.
Right, but they have the effect of tunneling you when you're walking on a 4-foot sidewalk with cars zipping by you at 20 or 30 miles an hour.
I don't think it'd be any more tunneling than if you just had a regular sidewalk, though.
Okay, you think people would feel the same at ease if they could see through the?
I don't think
I don't
that'd be a big issue.
Why don't you go on?
I'm not following it, I'm sorry. So if you're halfway up the driveway and you had a cross-section, there'd be a wall, then a sidewalk, then the 24-foot of pavement, then another sidewalk,
Well,
then a
there's
wall?
There's a curb, but
A curb?
No, there's not.
There's no sidewalk on the north side?
Yes, that's correct.
But what is that, what is it at the end there where it connects up to the building? What's that? Yeah,
That's
that's
the wall.
Oh, that's the wall.
Yeah, in this rendering, it's kind of tough to see.
And
but
it's
the wall.
it's for grading purposes?
Yeah, it's for grading.
So there's
and
a wall-
also because there's a when I get into the utilities, there's I think it's a recharge system in here and an outlet control structure
Yeah.
here. So that was to
So the cross-section would be a wall, then a curb, what, a Cape Cod berm curb? What kind of curb? Granite edge
I
curb?
don't know if
You
it
don't know?
if it had been discussed. It could
Asphalt,
be-
24 feet of asphalt, another curb, 4-foot sidewalk, wall?
There's no
I don't
sidewalk
think
on
that,
the
no.
north. There's just a
No, on the
sidewalk
south side.
On the south side, yeah.
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 So wall,
The wall,
curb, asphalt?
road, curb, sidewalk, wall.
Yeah. I don't think there is a standard on a driveway for a sidewalk. I mean, it's a driveway, you know? So, so, I don't know if we should treat the driveway as if it's a public way. It's, you know, I think it's more like what is reasonable to accommodate the foot traffic that people anticipate you'd have from Randolph Avenue.
Well, looking where the amenities are, there won't be any foot traffic. Everyone's going to be driving out of
Well,
this place.
I just don't think you'll have a standard, that's all.
How
I
long?
think it should be on the other side, though. It's strict.
See from the large building, let's call it the southerly side, though it's probably the easterly side. How long is it if I wanted to walk from that building?
From here down to
Yeah,
here.
down to the Randolph
I
Avenue.
wrote that down. I believe it's about 250 feet, roughly 200 to 250.
Okay. That's to Randolph Avenue.
Yes.
Downhill.
Yeah, it slopes at, it's about 3%. It's not steep. And then so once you get up to here, we have a painted crosswalk to cross to the sidewalk that starts here and kind of follows the edge of the landscaping, and it crosses in
I'm
front
sorry,
of this
did you
building.
say handicapped crosswalk?
It's just like a painted crosswalk, so that like people
Painted.
driving. I never. It's just a regular crosswalk, but it'll have like a ramp down, so it's handicapped.
Okay,
accessibility.
sure.
Um,
There's no stop sign there or anything, it's just,
no, I think
It's just slow down.
It's just hopefully people use their common sense. And then there's a sidewalk in front of here to the, I think there's building entrance here, and it basically the sidewalk just follows along the building, and then I think there's another entrance somewhere in here, I forget exactly where it is. And there's also another one of the painted crosswalks to cross here to get into the ramps in there. And there's a sidewalk that goes to the building entrance here and then into here. We hadn't put
So-
a sidewalk on the edge of here. We didn't anticipate there being a big issue with safety, but there's definitely space to put it in if that's something that needs to be considered. But yeah, for right now, the sidewalks stop, I think, about here and then about here. Alright, is it okay to go to the next slide? Or?
and is the back of the westerly side of the 30 apartment building, is that wetlands back there as well?
I do not think so.
Uplands.
It's upland? Okay. But is it level or is it very steep?
No, the grade's kind of, as you
I say,
away from Randolph Ave, the grade in general is going up.
Going
I
up.
don't have it with me.
So would you
I
say
have an
that,
existing conditions plan if you, it shows the grading.
so that's really not usable for recreation
Grading
space
shows
or
the
anything back there?
Really?
So behind there, yeah, it's,
Oh, the total width.
it looks like it goes up about 20 feet per 2 feet. So every 20 feet horizontally, the elevation
goes up
increases
2
about
feet.
2 feet, give or take.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What is that feature at the top in the very
This?
westerly? No, yeah, what's the feature? No, the feature at the
retaining
edge of the
wall.
driveway. You had said there's space for a sidewalk there.
Okay,
No, up at the
Up
top.
here?
Yeah, right there.
there's a retaining wall.
Oh, that's a
That
wall?
goes along there, and I think there's about 5 feet between
Yeah.
the curbing and
Yeah.
the wall.
Do you know how high that retaining wall is?
I think it ranges, I forget what the minimum is. I think it ranges up to 10 feet high,
The highest would be 10 feet?
I believe, roughly.
Is that the only retaining wall that's going to be built as part of this project? Or is the
So,
retaining wall to the rear? there?
There's a little one right here,
Yep.
just to kind of help out with some of the grading, and because it's so, the property line's so harsh right here. And then there's the 2 walls that just follow the access road.
How about
so
the back
there's-
retaining wall? How high is that?
This one?
Yes, sir.
I think it's maybe 2 feet. It's not a high wall at all.
It's small, okay.
Yeah, it's more so just to kind of help the transition the grades because of this portion right here. That's just the only issue that we had.
Back on that cross-section, I think it would help to understand that a little bit more. I think the whole width was 24 feet?
No, there's 24 feet for the road and then 4 feet for the
So
sidewalk.
28 feet for the driveway,
I
plus the
forget the
curbing
curb.
and the wall, whatever space the wall comes up.
Like
Okay, fine.
29 or something like that.
So
plus
it's
the
two
wall.
12-foot lanes.
Yeah. So going on to the grading plan. So I guess I kind of already talked about the walls, and they're, it's kind of tough to see on the slide. I know that we gave, in the submission package, there should be plans as well that have this on a blown up scale. But yeah, as I've said, the driveway slopes up at about 3%. Once we get into this lower parking area, it's at anywhere from 5 to 8%, no more than 8%, just to get the elevations up into the garage level for building 1 and to get up into this middle and upper parking area. And once we get into here, grading's held at no more than 2%, which is compliant with ADA for just handicap accessibility. And then the only thing to note is that once you get in this walk area, just because of the grading, there's an elevated walk that's it's handicap. It's a handicap ramp that's going to be, I think, maybe 2 feet above this little grass area that goes into the building. So there'd obviously be a handrail or something so that people don't fall off of that. And then, as I've said with the recreation area, this will just be gravelled. The grading won't change, so just to minimize disturbance for that. And then I've touched on the walls. So as you can see, just the walls, it's just the area, the issue of just not being able to carry these grades evenly over. So we just kind of had to shift some of the grading over here with that wall. So that's why that wall's up there. All right, so and then on the utility plan, so what we are doing is bringing, this is the sewer line, and I believe water, and then gas falls to the left of the sewer, up from the existing mains on Randolph Avenue. They'll fall off the access road through the middle or lower parking area, and then they'll go into the building 1 and building 2. 10 feet will be maintained between the sewer and water lines. And the water line will be brought